Okay, so you want to buy a soccer club in Major League Soccer. The point here is that it is easy to see why. You have watched packed stadiums in Atlanta, certainly. Seen Messi wearing pink, caught all the highlight reels. At some point thought, how hard could it be? Buy a team, sign a superstar, fill the stands, and watch the money come in. But that is not really how it works. Here is the part most people don't realize. Majority of the MLS clubs lose money every single year just from running the team. And the weird part is that their owners already know that. They are completely fine with those losses because they are looking at the bigger financial picture, not just what the club makes in a single season. By the end of this, you will see exactly why a billionaire can lose $10 million a year on paper and still think owning an MLS club was one of the best investments they ever made. At the cheap end of the catalog, there is no cheap end. That catches a lot of people's attention. You might think there is some smaller MLS club you can pick up for an affordable price, but that is just not how this league works. The reason is actually simple. MLS decides who gets in, and they have spent a lot of years making sure the number of teams stays limited. That scarcity has become one of the league's biggest assets. The fewer spots there are, the more valuable each one becomes. Back in 1996, when MLS first kicked off, a team cost around $5 million. In 2007, Toronto entered the league for $10 million. From there, the numbers just kept climbing. Charlotte joined in 2019 and paid $325 million. Then came San Diego. They paid a record $500 million, and that was only for the right to join the league. No stadium, no players, no coaching staff, just a place on the list. That payment is called an expansion fee. This is where the business side gets really interesting. The money does not stay with MLS. It gets shared between the clubs that are already in the league. So every new owner who comes in is basically adding value for everyone who got there before. It is a system that rewards the people already inside. Of course, not everyone wants to spend $500 million on a brand new franchise. The other option is buying an existing club. At least then you are getting something that already has real value behind it. There is a fan base, sponsorship deals, a stadium agreement, and a brand people already recognize. Right now, the average MLS club is valued somewhere between $600 and $700 million. The biggest names have gone even further. LAFC and Inter Miami are both worth well over $1.25 billion. The funny thing is, you are not really paying for a business that makes huge profits today. What you are actually buying is future value. The expectation is that the club will be worth more 5 or 10 years from now than it is today. And once you understand that, the rest of the MLS business model starts making a lot more sense. And that bet has been paying off spectacularly. Inter Miami is the clearest example. Only a few years ago, in one of its early seasons, it was valued at around $525 million. Today, it's worth well over $1 billion. Nobody made that money by selling more hot dogs. They made it because the whole league is being repriced upward, year after year, and owning any piece of it has meant riding that wave. When you buy an MLS team, the ticket sales and the sponsorships are almost a side hustle. The main event is the number on the price tag, and that number has been going one direction. And then there's the distressed aisle, which in MLS barely exists, and that absence is the most important clue in this entire video. In most industries, when a business runs badly, it goes bankrupt and you can buy the wreckage cheap. In MLS, that almost never happens because the league itself is built to stop it. We'll get to why, but file this away. You will struggle to find a cheap, failing MLS team, and the reason is the single strangest thing about how this league is put together. First, though, your first bill. You've got your team. Now you have to field it, and this is where new owners get their first real shock because it works nothing like European soccer. In England, if you're rich, you just buy the best players money can buy. In MLS, you are not allowed to. The league has a salary cap, a hard limit on what you can spend on your roster, and in 2025, that cap was under $6 million for your entire team. Read that again. $6 million for a whole squad in a world where a single decent European player earns more than that by himself. So your first bill isn't shockingly high, it's shockingly controlled. The league reaches into your wallet and tells you how much you're allowed to spend, which feels insane until you understand who it's protecting. It's protecting you from yourself and from every other owner who might otherwise bankrupt themselves trying to win. But of course, you've seen Messi, and Messi does not make $6 million. He makes over $20 million a year in salary alone, and more like 50 to 60 million when you count everything. So how is that legal under a $6 million cap? This is the trick that makes the whole league work, and it's called the designated player rule, nicknamed the Beckham rule, because they invented it in 2007 so the LA Galaxy could sign David Beckham. Here's how it works. Each team is allowed up to 3 special players who are allowed to earn absolutely anything, and only a tiny slice of their giant salary, a few $100,000, counts against the cap. So Messi's $20 million salary counts as less than $700,000 on Inter Miami's books. The rest, the owner just pays, out of pocket, on top. Which gives us rule number 1 of owning an MLS team. The cap controls what everyone spends on the little guys, and the superstars are a luxury you buy separately, with your own money on the side. So how does the money actually come in? And here's where you need the one idea that unlocks everything. MLS is not 30 separate businesses competing with each other. It's one single business with 30 branches. Lawyers call it a single entity. What it means in plain English is this. The league centrally owns all the player contracts. The league signs the big national TV deals and the big national sponsorships and keeps that money, and you, the owner, don't really own a team so much as you own the right to operate one branch of the league and keep the local money it generates. Think of it like a fast food franchise. McDonald's owns the brand, the system, the national advertising. You own one restaurant. You keep what your restaurant makes locally, the tickets, the local sponsors, the merchandise sold at your stadium, the parking. But you're part of one big machine, and the machine sets the rules. That franchise structure is the secret to the whole thing, and it explains the empty, distressed aisle from earlier. In a normal league of independent teams, a badly run team goes broke and dies. But in a single entity, the league can't really let a branch fail, because a failure makes the whole brand look weak and drags down the value of everyone's franchise. So the league smooths things over, shares revenue, and holds the weak ones up. There's a cost to this arrangement you should see clearly. The league takes a cut of your local money too. A slice of your ticket sales goes back to the league, and when you sell a player to a foreign club for a big fee, a real chunk of that windfall gets shared with the league as well. You are always paying a tax to belong. The downside for you is you're not free. You can't just spend whatever you want to win. The upside is you're not alone. When you buy in, you're buying a share of the whole league's growth, not just your own team's luck. And the growth is real. The league's national TV deal is with Apple, 10 years, $2.5 billion, and every Messi game and every other game streams on it. Attendance is genuinely strong, averaging around 22,000 fans a game in 2025, which actually beats the NBA and NHL. Atlanta United, the attendance king, regularly pulls over 40,000 people to a game. So money does come in, from tickets, from local sponsors, from that national TV pot, and from selling players to bigger foreign clubs, which has quietly become a real earner, with MLS clubs generating close to $250 million in player sales in a single recent stretch. And it's worth seeing just how powerful one right signing can be, because it makes the whole appreciation game obvious. When Messi arrived in 2023, Inter Miami's revenue reportedly jumped from around $55 million to about $127 million in a single year and kept climbing toward $200 million after that. The team's value roughly doubled. One player did that. Not by winning everything, but by making the brand suddenly matter to the entire planet. That's the dream every MLS owner is secretly buying a lottery ticket for, and it's also why so many of them cheerfully overpay for a fading legend. The legend isn't there to win games. He's there to move the value of the whole franchise. But here's the honest part. the part the highlight reels skip. For most teams, all that revenue still doesn't cover the costs. Stadiums cost hundreds of millions to build. Superstars cost tens of millions on top of the cap. Not everyone gets a Messi, and the ones who don't still have all the bills. And that shiny Apple TV deal has a catch that stings. The league only shares the extra streaming money with owners after subscriber numbers cross a certain secret threshold, and years in, many team executives quietly believe that bonus money may simply never arrive. So you collect your revenue, you pay your bills, and for a lot of clubs, the bottom line is still red. Which brings us to the graveyard, and MLS has a small but very educational one. The oldest graves are from the very beginning. In its first 5 years, the entire league reportedly lost around $250 million, and it nearly didn't survive. After the 2001 season, MLS simply shut down 2 entire teams, the Tampa Bay Mutiny and the Miami Fusion, and one of those owners had reportedly burned through $15 million in operating losses. The lesson: in the early days, even the league itself wasn't sure this would work, and being a pioneer meant being the one who paid to find out. The most instructive grave is Chivas USA. In 2004, an owner had the clever idea of creating a Los Angeles team aimed specifically at Mexican-American fans tied to the famous Mexican club Chivas de Guadalajara. It sounded brilliant. It was a disaster. The team shared a stadium with the LA Galaxy, always looked like the little sibling, and the narrow strategy of targeting just one slice of the audience never caught fire. The league commissioner later admitted, very bluntly, that the strategy just wasn't effective. By 2014, it was such a mess that MLS took the club back, shut it down entirely, and replaced it with a fresh start, which became LAFC, now the most valuable team in the whole league. The lesson: a great location can't save a bad plan, and the same city that killed one team made another one a billion-dollar success a few years later. So let's calculate how much you'll actually earn. You've bought a solid mid-pack MLS team, and I'm going to show you the 2 numbers that matter, because in this business they point in opposite directions. In the optimistic scenario, you run the team well. You bring in maybe $50 to $70 million a year in local revenue, tickets, sponsors, your slice of the national deals. You spend it all and a bit more on the roster, the stadium, the staff, and if you're disciplined and a little lucky, you roughly break even or make a small profit of a few million. That's the good year. Notice how unexciting that is. The best case on the actual business is basically a wash. Now the realistic scenario, which is most teams most years. Your local revenue is more like 30 to 40 million. Your stadium is still being paid off. You signed one designated player who got injured, so you paid a superstar salary for a guy in a walking boot. And at the end of the year, you've lost somewhere between $5 and $15 million. On the team itself, you are underwater. So why on earth would anyone do this? Here's why, and it's the reveal that flips the whole video. You're not really in the business of running a soccer team. You're in the business of owning a soccer team, and those are completely different things. Remember, that team you might have bought for a few $100 million is now, on average, worth around $600 or $700 million, and MLS values have jumped more than 100% in about 5 years. So you might lose $10 million a year operating it, and watch its value climb by 50 or 100 million in that same year. The operating loss is real, but it's basically the annual membership fee you pay to hold an asset that's quietly appreciating far faster than the loss. And when you eventually sell, that's where the real money was hiding the entire time. This is education, not financial advice, and past growth in franchise values absolutely does not guarantee future growth, especially if the World Cup excitement fades, but it explains everything. The owners aren't confused about the losses. The losses are the price of the ticket, and the ticket keeps getting more valuable. If this was useful, subscribe and drop a comment. If you owned a team, would you blow your money on one giant superstar to sell tickets, or spend it building a smarter squad that actually wins? I read every one, because here's what you actually bought. You did not buy a soccer team. You bought a share in a members-only club that gets more exclusive and more valuable every single time it lets someone new in. The trophies are nice. The Messi jersey is nice. But the real product was never the winning. It was the being inside. You lose a little every year for the privilege of watching the thing you own become worth more, and one day, when a richer person than you wants in, you hand them the door and collect for all those quiet years of losing.